Hi everyone, this is Surina. You are watching Now It's So Vivid. I'm so happy to be back to my channel. It's been a few weeks. I had some work stress to start with, and then that took up a lot of my mental energy, really, so I took some time off. But also, I went on my honeymoon, so I was away for 2 weeks. My husband and I journeyed to the UK and had a marvelous time. I got to have all sorts of sort of witchy encounters while I was there and a few spiritual breakthroughs, and I feel so much better since I got back. I feel really refreshed. So I thought I'd check in with you guys and tell you what I did and show you a little haul of some of the souvenirs that I brought home. So this was my first journey to the UK. My husband has been there a few times before, and I would say that even though we had 2 weeks there, our vacation was quite advantageous. Like we saw a lot of stuff. We crammed in a lot, and it was really fun. The first leg of our journey in particular was quite busy, but we ended up seeing a lot of really cool stuff, and we got a lot of like the quote-unquote witchy stuff out of the way, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't feeling sort of spiritually recharged by any of the subsequent experiences that we had. It was really fun overall. We stayed with family in Bristol the first few nights and explored a bit of Bath, and then drove to Glastonbury and coincidentally stayed there on the night of the autumnal equinox. So we were shopping around town and it was really bustling. Like the pagans were out, and there were lots of like blessed bees going around, and it was really cool. But my gosh, that is such a sweet town, especially if you're like me and you like to shop. Lots of metaphysical shops, lots of crystal stores. I was practically dragged out of every single one of those. So many sparklies. But yeah, lots of really good shopping, lots of very cute cafes, and the locals were really nice. A lot of them were really eager to probe the American tourists and see what we thought of Glastonbury, to which we had lots of positive feedback. We explored Glastonbury Abbey, which is apparently where King Arthur was once buried, although maybe not anymore. I was never quite clear on that, but it was beautiful. Glastonbury Abbey is a stunning place. Like, for, being mostly ruins, that is just like one of the most awe-inspiring little corners of the world that I've ever seen. It's lovely. And we also climbed to the top of the mountain that is... I can't remember if it's actually the hill itself or the tower that's considered Glastonbury Tor, but whatever it is, we climbed to the top and we enjoyed the view from above, so that was pretty sweet. It was cool to like be in a pagan-friendly town and sort of not feel like a freak for once. I definitely don't feel that way when I'm at home, so it was cool to be out and proud for a little while. From Glastonbury, we drove to Cornwall, and we stopped first in Boscastle, which is actually where the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic is located. I'd like to thank whoever suggested that to me on the YouTube Pagans Facebook page, because that was easily one of my favorite things that we saw on our entire trip. I just love Boscastle, honestly. I even if the Witchcraft Museum wasn't there, that place has a really special energy to it. The town center exists in this gorge that has a river running right through it. So you're surrounded by like these slate cliffs that are very jagged and rocky and covered in moss, and the air smells so good and fresh and like sea salt. And yes, the water element of having this river just run right through the town was really cool. And we did quite a bit of hiking there as well. We hiked all the way to this like Coast Guard building that was sort of standing on one of the cliffs, and took a lot of pictures and talked to the guy who volunteered for the Coast Guard up there, who was happy to like give us all of these tidbits about the area and show us all of his gizmos inside of the tower. And we had a good time talking to him. And I just decided that one day I want to retire in Boscastle, Cornwall, because I just love that place so much. It's very special. It's really evocative. After that, we drove to Tintagel, which is the place that King Arthur was born, apparently. So we got to see both his death and his birthplace. Castle Tintagel is a fun place to explore. Warning, if you go there, you better be prepared to walk a lot and climb a lot of stairs. A lot of very dramatically steep stairs. But honestly, it's all worth it because the views are spectacular, and if you're brave enough to actually climb down the stairs onto the beach, you get to visit Merlin's cave, and it's just so stunning. Like I can't even articulate it the way that I want to. It's a really special place, really magical. But yeah, oh my gosh, so much walking. So much stairs and climbing and walking. It was good though. It was good for me. I'm out of shape. We flew up to Edinburgh for a few days, which was really cool. We got to explore a lot of the historical sites like Edinburgh Castle and stuff, but we also visited my personal favorite, the Camera Obscura and World of Illusions that is there. Really fun sort of playhouse devoted to optical illusions and sort of things of that sort, with a genuine Victorian camera obscura up on their top floor. We live in the age of like smartphones and shit like that, so to us it's nothing, but to, you know, someone in the late 1800s who can like see the image of people walking around on the street on this table, like, whew, that must have blew their mind. So that was a really fun place to explore. We also got to see things like Greyfriars Kirkyard, which is a really old cemetery, which felt really cool to like stroll through in the middle of autumn with the crisp air around us. But that's apparently the location that J.K. Rowling derived some of her character names from Harry Potter characters, so I thought that was kind of cool. We, you know, explored the gravestones and tried to find a few people. We found a few. We found Thomas Riddle, and we found one that said Sirius Black on it, but it was sort of like handwritten, so I'm not sure if it was just graffiti. I can't say that I know. But it was still really impressive nonetheless. Very old graves and mausoleums and things. Then we went back down into England, and we stayed in London mostly. We were just outside of London with some family, and we did a lot of exploring there. We also took a day trip to Brighton, which was really nice. That's a gorgeous coastal town that has quite a bit of like different shops and cafes and pubs in it, and another place that I feel like we could have devoted several days to, but unfortunately only had an afternoon there. So note to self, go back to Brighton and do a bit of more in-depth exploring. But it was really a beautiful location. There's this thing called the I-360 where you get to sit in this pod that sort of rises in this tower, and you get a 360-degree view of Brighton. So you can, and they have a bar, so we had like a beer and we were like walking around and looking at the tops of the buildings, and some of those are like painted with murals and stuff like that. So it's just such a funky, cool town. I've heard several people compare it to like San Francisco, so it's like the San Francisco of the UK. So I thought that was pretty sweet. And then we went back to London, and really the last thing that was sort of spiritually impactful, I should say, was going to the British Museum. Just getting to sort of bask in all of that history and take a long walk around the museum and check out the different sections of different cultures, different ancient cultures. I was particularly drawn to the ancient Egyptians and, of course, the ancient Greeks and Romans, but also the ancient Etruscans. I always forget about them, and I feel kind of bad about that. Being Italian, it just feels like it's something I should really explore further, and being exposed to all that sort of like old stuff, all the old artifacts of different cultures from the past really made me want to dive into my roots and sort of get more of an ancestral twist into my magical practice that maybe I hadn't before. I bought a book a really long time ago about Italian witchcraft that I've been meaning to read. And I've been putting it off, and I think it has to do with sort of a reconciliation of sorts, because I don't really get along with the Italians in my family. Not because they're Italian, but just because I don't like them. My father's side in the family in particular, I really just don't ever talk to them, because there's some bad blood there. But I don't think that, long term that should prevent me from trying to like delve further into my ancestry. So, I can sort of reconcile the two, I think, and sort of check in with some of the bloodlines, the blood lineage. So yeah, I had a really good time in the UK, and it was hard to come back. I'm sort of like slowly reintegrating back to reality, but I don't know, I'm just so moved by my experiences there, and so excited to get started again and implement some new things into my practice based on my inspiration from going to the British Museum and then going to the Witchcraft Museum. So, the gears are turning. I've got a fire under my ass. I'm ready to go. So, I look forward to sharing some of that stuff with you guys when the time comes. I think it's time for the haul. Let's do it, guys. I'm going to show you my goodies. So the first thing I wanted to show you guys are the tarot cards that I brought home with me from the UK. I lucked out. 2 of these decks I actually got secondhand, which I thought was kind of a perk of being in such a witchy-friendly town, because I got them both in Glastonbury. The first one that I picked up is this one. This is the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. That's what the back looks like, and I'm really enjoying this deck a lot. I think the artwork in this deck is really beautiful, and uses a very, very gorgeous color palette. I really enjoy the slightly impressionistic way that these cards are sort of illustrated, and the sort of simplified images that sort of riff on the Rider-Waite style tarot structure, but honestly are deeply personal and come with a storytelling element, which is very prevalent in the book that that accompanies this deck. So I highly recommend this deck to anybody, especially if you're into the images. I mean, like, look at the Knight of Swords. Like, I mean, just like most of these are really thought-provoking and say so much while doing so little. Like, a lot of the images are just very simple. Love it. So I've really been enjoying sort of getting to know this deck. Oops. The second deck I picked up is this one over here. This is called the Celtic Tarot, and this one I got for £5, y'all. It came pre-loved, as the shop owner said to me. But I just think this deck is so wicked gorgeous. I love the intricate Celtic knotwork and the different patterns that you see throughout this deck. Again, really fond of the bright primary colors. Really, really loving this deck. And I really enjoy the sort of like heather gray background that it has. They're not white, these cards. They're actually like a very light gray. So there's something really cool about that. Also, I would say that this deck is going to be a challenge for me, which may be a good thing, because the pip cards do not have scene images on them that are typically depicted in sort of Rider-Waite-Smith tradition. I would call this more of a thoth or tote, depending on how you pronounce that word. They're sort of closer to that, but not with the court cards. I think are still Rider-Waite-Smith, so it's kind of like a weird combo of those two tarot traditions. It's very interesting, but I'm not familiar enough with the minor arcana to actually know what the cards mean on their own without the scene images, so that'll be an interesting new adventure for me. I really just bought this deck because I thought it was beautiful. I would say my only other worry is that I did see quite a telling review on the Eclectic website that the writer of this particular deck, the booklet that came with this deck, is sort of not as knowledgeable as they claim in Celtic folklore and myth, so that's quite a shame. Might have to take my interpretations of these cards from a more sort of instinctual place, but I still think that they're really gorgeous. So that's the Celtic Tarot. And then that's the back if I haven't shown it already. And then the last deck that I picked up, which I actually bought in Scotland, is the Night Sun Tarot. This is a Lo Scarabeo deck. So it didn't come with much. It was just the deck of cards, the little white book, and a flimsy cardboard box, which I ended up having to pitch because it got kind of like beat up in my luggage. But I'm a fan of this deck. I think it's really cool. I noticed that a lot of people that bought this deck and reviewed it online didn't care for the computer generated images. And there are certain instances where I do find the faces in particular distracting. That's not a good example. Let's see. What's this guy look like? Actually, he's not bad either. There's a couple of them in here where the faces just look goofy. And I don't know. I'm willing to overlook it because I'm really a fan of the imagery in this deck, even if I'm not always so fond of the images in this deck, if that makes any sense. So, yeah, like, her face is a little goofy looking. I mean, like, they just look like computer-generated images, people. They look very video game-like, but, you know, I'm okay with that. And I'm really fond of the theme of this deck, which pertains to the Jungian shadow, and the imagery is very, like, sort of cryptic and esoteric, and I'm into that, so I thought it was really cool. So I picked it up and gave the cute little shop in Edinburgh some business because I really loved looking around in there. Oh, man. They had some really cool stuff in that shop. So yeah, tarot. Oh, and then while I'm at my desk, I can show you the book that I bought from the Museum of Witchcraft. It is Cecil Williamson's Book of Witchcraft, a grimoire of the Museum of Witchcraft by Steve Patterson. And it didn't even come with a dust cover. It just came like this, bare with the sigil on the front, looking very evocative and cool. And I like this book because so far, there's the man himself. There's Sticky. This book actually is just sort of a direct transcription of Cecil Williamson's own notes, sort of things he'd collected in his own grimoire, and then the author will go into further depth and sort of explain things that, origins of the particular things that Cecil Williamson touches on in his work. So it's really cool. I mean, like, I'm reading the words of an actual Cornish witch right now. Actually, I don't know that Cecil Williamson himself was from Cornwall. I retract that statement. I don't know where he came from, but he lived in Cornwall and he was himself a folk witch, and he was cool as hell. Very eccentric old guy. So I've been enjoying reading this. It's very, it is a true grimoire. I mean, like, you can tell there is a lot of stuff that he sort of left out in his writing. So, references to things that he doesn't really bother to explain. And, you can tell he wrote these notes for himself. They were a collection of things that he compiled either to do later or from witches in the area, and all based on pre-knowledge that he already had that we have, you know, we only get to guess about. So it's been kind of cool to sort of dive into his mind. He was a really quirky, dramatic dude. I love it. So now we've come to the altar so that I can show you some of the crystals that I brought home. When I was in Boscastle, oopsie, let's just move that right there. When I was in Boscastle, I picked up this. Now this is a piece of amethyst, but it's an aura amethyst. I hadn't realized that they were making auras out of variants of amethyst, so I thought that was pretty cool. So I brought this one home. I just love the purples and how pretty and sparkly it is. So now it's got a very comfy place at the foot of my star goddess. Right there. And then over on this side, I've got this crystal right here, which is called apophyllite, I think. It looks like quartz, but it's not quartz. It's a different kind of crystal. It's got a different growth structure that you can see kind of looks like, I think it looks like a series of buildings all sort of stacked together. And I really enjoyed the sort of cathedral-esque quality of this stone. So something new, something I'd never heard of before. So I picked up a sample of that. And then when we were in Glastonbury, I picked up a piece of a stone that actually comes from Somerset. So it's a local mineral and it's called potato stone. And I got one that was raw in the sort of very, very sparkly geode crystal structure. And then I also picked up a specimen of the polished type, which turns into this very sort of pale, pretty pink and purple stone. Very cool. Finally, maybe my favorite thing, and it was free, but I kind of stole it, is this, which is a hagstone, my very first. And my husband found this for me while we were on the beach in Brighton, and you're not supposed to take the stones from their Pebble Beach, but I did anyway. Because, let's face it, when else was I going to find a hagstone? And this one's got such a cool hole that goes right through it. I actually picked up a couple of rocks, including this one over here, which didn't have a hole quite through it, but I thought it would make a really cool candle holder for like a very skinny pillar candle, so I've been holding on to this one too. Possibly the most important souvenir of note, and my personal favorite, happens to be my hat. I love this hat so much. Oh gosh, it's so cool looking. And I got it in Glastonbury, and it really adds to like my new contemporary witchy vibe that I got going on. I am a hat person. I just haven't been wearing them for the past few years because I've been digging like the big mane of hair that I had. Then I cut my hair off and my head's just felt a little wrong. I didn't like my haircut and I couldn't figure out what to do with it, but oh, the hat just brings it back together, and gosh, I just love this hat so much. And while I was in Edinburgh, there was this street performer that we stopped to see, and he turned to me and he said in front of a crowd of like dozens of people, he goes, "You, I loved you in Beetlejuice." And I just took that as the highest of compliments. I was like, yeah, man. So just remember, kids, you too could be somebody's goth icon. Thank you so much for joining me during this sort of check-in and haul video. More videos to come. The next one will be my honeymoon vlog. The next one after that, I think, is going to be a long overdue video about my personal transformation in the past year. I did get a comment while I was overseas asking for a little more details on my name change, so that's going to be part of that video. So if you are the person that asked for that video, it is coming. I hope you enjoy. And until next time, everybody, have a wonderful autumn and sweet dreams.